The burning, the deaths, the horror. A boy managed to rummage through the piles of burnt-out books and charred remains as he saw the people succumbing to the flames. He managed to make his way out, hoping to be able to find his sister. Seeking her, breaking barriers, entering the tents, he finally saw her just as he saw something horrible. The man who was responsible for it, the man who did all of it, it was just a glimpse, but he would remember his face forever. He was tall, taller than most of them, and he had a scar that ran over his forehead. It was so deep and so horrible that it was leaking pus and blood. The boy managed to hold the infant in his hand while he heard the others. The others, there were others. There were cries coming from his siblings. He could feel every inch of his frame burning and aching. He slowly touched his head and realized he was running a high temperature. And at that moment, the door opened. Perhaps it was his cry, but it had led Durupti to enter frantically. She knelt beside him in concern. I couldn't save them. I couldn't save our brothers, our sisters. It's all right. It's all right. Durupti began to pat him, cleaning his clammy forehead and running her fingers through his hair to calm down. Koko, Vikoko. The two generals entered instantly. Get me cold water at this instant, and get me the shaman as well. They nodded and stormed out. You'll be fine, brother. She kissed him on the head. You'll be just fine. You just need some. The sins of my failure, Titi, they are catching up to me. They are going to kill me, he mumbled, his pupils growing white, while his soul began to feel like it was ripping apart from his flesh. No, no one will kill you. No one will kill my brother. I promise you that. She hugged him as tightly as possible, his head against her chest. You'll be just fine. Kali was leaning against the bed now. A damp cloth, drenched with water, was placed around his head while Durupti held onto his hands. The sweat had dried and he felt better, but his chest hurt more than the last time. The shaman had left and Koko and Vikoko were standing aside, concerned. It was always a delight to see them together, for they both looked so similar and yet distant. Vikoko had her blonde hair tied in a braid while Koko had short hair, but both of them had the same build, which complemented each other. When he had met them for the first time, Kali was young, but they were younger. We all have grown up together. Durupti dismissed them. Are you all right? Kali nodded. He lied, because his chest felt heavy. Don't worry, I will be fine. You said something in your hysteria. What? About seeing a man with a scar, she said. Kali narrowed his eyes. He didn't remember. Did I? You talked about leaving our siblings behind. I always do that when I feel afraid. Kali clenched his teeth. He was in a position of fear, over which he had no control. You know that. What happened then wasn't your fault. But I should have known. Kali looked away from her. At least, you protected me. Yes. Kali wasn't disappointed. He was glad he was able to do that. But it still haunted him, killed him from the inside, his stomach churning, and his mind somersaulting, convulsing into morbid thoughts of the counterfactual. I have to see him. There were yells from outside. He could hear the protests, and the way Koko and Vikoko tried to stop these protests. He's resting. Resting? He should be doing anything but resting. I have been betrayed and let down. Kali gave an acknowledging nod to Durupti, who went to the door and opened it. Let him in. Koko and Vikoko stopped and Vasuki entered the chambers, clearly ticked off and agitated. How is your health? Your Highness, how do you feel? Should I bring you something else while bodies of my men continue to pile up? Vasuki complained mockingly. Don't you dare speak to. Kali held her palm tightly and Durupti was silenced. He knew it was his fault, being in bed, but he had no idea what ramifications it had caused. What happened, Lord Vasuki? Takshak was apparently stabbed and thrown from a 3-story inn, Vasuki added. Imagine who would have the audacity to do that? Kali knew what Vasuki was implying. Do you have any proof? I am searching for it, but just so you know, the slightest inkling, and it will mean war. I will send an army to massacre that fat worm of a creature, sitting on all that bloody wealth. I know Kuvera and he's a man of his words. He promised he wouldn't kill anyone to incite a war. Well, he's backing off from his word, for words don't matter anymore. Vasuki stopped pacing in the room. Just so you know, Kali, we had a pact and I made sure to uphold my end of it. I gave you the responsibility for maintaining peace among us. But if you are not fit to do that, I will have to find alternatives and you won't like that at all. Is that a threat? Lord Vasuki, even in dire health, Kali's voice sent chilling tremors down Vasuki's spine. Vasuki looked at him, stunned for a while. I am investigating this myself. If I get time, I shall tell you what I find. Till then farewell, as my sister Princess Mansa is coming to visit, and bid farewell to her best friend, General Takshak. I hope to see you there at his funeral as well. And with that, he left. Clasping his palms and placing them over his head, Kali began to frown and tried to think hard. What should he do? What happened? Durupti asked. You know what happened. Kali shook his head. He called out to his generals, who were standing and guarding his room. They entered. I am sure you heard what the snake said, Kali began. I want you to find out who did this and investigate faster than the snake. I don't want him to cause any break in the peace I have barely just negotiated and put into place. The twins nodded and left, this time for the exit of the fort. It's almost sad when you lose something from your grip, something you achieved after so much effort. I understand, brother. He gave a warm pat on her cheek before drifting back to sleep, hoping to recover from the fever and the body ache. But his mind wandered back to the village that burned. There had been a reason why he wanted the so-called tribal and Manav peace, for it was their bitter rivalry that had led to his family's demise and the burning of his village. Who was the scarred man? For it changed everything. The fight was never about peace, but about secrets, and those secrets rested in the ends of his mind. Somewhere he was too frightened to unlock and look for them. Kalki didn't leave for the Anteshi of his father. He was too weak for that. Unlike Arjun, who carried out the funerary duties, he was changed. His face had a scar which instinctively made people recall. The scar was a reminder that Arjun would lament every day of his life. That was worse than death. He had seen, from far, the Anteshi, away from his disappointed and grieving mother who knew no consolation. She deserved better than a bunch of mlechas taking away her husband. She deserved so much more, for she had always been a noble woman. He traveled to the place where the bloodshed had taken place. Kalki came here, not to recall the tragedy, but to see if his father had left anything behind. The tents of the mlechas had been torn down, and the horror of the fire pits was filled with mlecha bodies. The triumph of a battle often ends with innocent casualties, and that was when he heard it. It was like a croak, a harsh noise that pricked his ears, as the words came glaringly clear. Vishnu, Vishnu. Kalki knelt down. In the midst of the broken down tent was a cage, and in it there was a disheveled but magnificent parrot, just looking up at Kalki. Hello, Vishnu. How do you know my father's name? Shuko. Shuko. Kalki didn't understand. He pulled open the cage door and let the parrot fly away. Vishnu, the name was almost hurting him. The parrot must have known his father, some way or the other. Kalki didn't have anything to feed it, so he just patted it. The parrot climbed on his hand, slowly making his way up to his shoulder. Shuko. Your name is Shuko then? The parrot pecked at his tunic in acknowledgement. I suppose we will call you Shuko then. He walked up towards the village. I hope you will tell me all about how you met my father. He sat close to the river. The wounds were still hurting him, making it hard to even breathe properly. He picked up a pebble and tossed it across the water, making it skip across the surface. Shuko had flown away to get food, and he wasn't back yet. The funeral was over and Lakshmi had come looking for him. She sat next to him and didn't say anything for the next half an hour. Kalki didn't mean to speak as well. They just remained silent, and he liked that. Any other friend would have felt the need to speak up, say some comforting words and leave. Lakshmi wasn't like that. She understood Kalki more than anyone, and she understood that words don't cure grief. Kalki felt his fingers interlocking with hers as they watched the sky's bright blue meeting slowly with the orange-tinged dusk, and the clouds looking like the handspun pieces of gauzy cloth. He did a mistake, and he wanted help. So I did, Kalki began. What do you mean, Bala? He said, turning to her. You asked me about him, right? What does he owe me? What does a guardsman of a tavern owe me? He allowed a young child inside. Allowed is a strong word since the girl sneaked in without his permission. He couldn't stop her, but it was his fault, for he didn't return for her, to pull her out, to make her understand that it was a bad place for kids like her. She was just 13. Lakshmi's face was curious as Kalki kept watching her. She didn't understand that men don't see a kid as a kid when they are drunk. They see a woman, and they don't have limits, no rules that bind them. Who was she? I don't know. We asked around. What happened exactly? Her hand tightened around his palm. Kalki began to narrate. It was a year back. The tavern wasn't just a place where you could get drinks. It had a lot of rooms and it had a lot of women offering sexual favors. Bala had forgotten about the girl who went inside. In the morning, he went through the rooms with a bucket of water and a mop, coming to the last room that was locked. He called Arindam, the owner of the tavern, and he was surprised as well. No one dared to lock rooms there. Bala smashed the door open, breaking it at the hinges to find the room was stinking of spilt wine and coitus. And in the corner, there was a girl. She had been hiding. Her clothes were ripped, just like the blankets around her. Sometimes there are no resolutions to conundrums, Kalki continued. We never got to know who the person was. Bala looked for me and asked for a favor, for me to help her find a home. Did you? Yes. In another village. He paused. He cried on my shoulder, and it was awkward. He cried until he could no longer cry, and he blamed himself for what had happened to the girl. Lakshmi looked down. I didn't want to tell you, for you would judge Bala. He was forever in debt to me, even though I did it not for him but for her. He didn't care. He promised he would protect me and my little brother as long as he would be alive. Lakshmi nodded. I don't judge him. You are wrong about that, you know. Perhaps I am. We forgot who we were and we forget how we used to be around each other. It has been 2 years since we last saw each other. Her fingers ran through his hair. I missed you a lot. I have changed. Yes. But don't forget me. I'm still the same, just with different ideas now. Kalki smiled. The slight touch of her fingers gave him butterflies in his stomach. It was an airy feeling for him. It made him feel happy. The touch of her. It made him feel glad, and he wanted to just hold on to it. I also am a bearer of news. What happened? She took a deep breath, as if it was a way to apologize. I know we have seen a lot, but the last time I went to meet my aunt, she asked me to return to the city. Said things have settled down in Indragarh, and it would be all right. Why didn't you tell me? It wasn't the right place or time. For how long? Kalki's voice quivered. Not again. He would be left alone. I don't know for how long, but it'll be for a while, sure. I don't want you to go to the city again. I know. Will you then? She blinked, perhaps contemplating. You know I will. I still will. I want to be like my aunt, authoritative, and strong and educated. Shambhala would make me anything but that. Kalki wasn't disappointed. Rather, he expected that answer. Well, that's something that's never changed about you. He paused. I will come to visit you this time, I promise. You better. My aunt promised me that she'll get me a job at a library. Imagine how cool would that be? Kalki nodded. Books are interesting. Might I bring Arjun then as well? Of course. They both smiled each other. Kalki saw a glint of happiness in her eyes. Lakshmi made things better for him. Even little things, like the way she would keep complaining, or the way her brows would go up while nervous. It all made him see her in a different light. She was adorable. She came forward, and he did it too. His heart was pumping hard, his lips had gone cold, and his eyes were beginning to close when Shuko appeared, croaking loudly, Kalki, Kalki. Kalki and Lakshmi pulled back instantly, realizing what they were about to do, especially on the day of the morning. Lakshmi had gone red, while Kalki felt his skin grow worn. His heart was beating hard, and he had never felt so unsettled in his life. Who is this? Shuko. The parrot sat idly on his shoulder. Made a new friend today. Interesting. She laughed, and they both saw the sun dip, their fingers still locked with each other.